We're going to take the serpentine belt off, and to do that I'm going to use a half-inch breaker bar with a 3/8 inch adapter that just snaps on to the end of it, and we're going to put it down into the belt tensioner, and there's a 3/8 inch hole there that the end of that socket will just fit into. Now we have the breaker bar into the belt tensioner, and it's important that you make sure that the socket drive is all the way into that square hole in that belt tensioner. Now we're going to pull back and loosen the belt. And I just slipped it off the power steering pump, and now the belt is loose and can be removed, so it's out of the way. If you are not sure of how the belt should go on, it might be a good idea to take a picture of it or make a drawing of it and keep that for reference. And then we're going to check it for cracks and anything else that it looks like. And this belt, being this car was purchased used, looks to be in pretty good condition, so we'll probably just reuse it. I don't see any cracks. Seems to be in good shape on both sides. No marks of any sort to indicate that the pulley was slipping or anything. There's no belt noise when the car was running. So we'll set that aside for now, and we'll use that later. Since we're also going to be replacing the water pump as part of this, we're draining out the radiator, and the drain petcock is located right down on the passenger side of the bottom of the radiator, and it's a flat piece that I'll point out right here. You can see that. It's right down there. It's just a flat tab. So, and what I did to make that a little easier to get at and to open up was I took an old socket I had. It was a cheap socket that was worn out, and I just cut a slot in it and put it on my ratchet wrench, and use that to turn it open with. And then there's a tube underneath here. There's a drain tube right underneath that comes out the bottom plastic pan, and that's just right directly below that drain petcock, and then you can just drain it into the pan. Nice and neat, and doesn't run all over. Works pretty good. You also have to make sure that when you're draining that water out, that you take the radiator cap off, which is located in a plastic tank on the driver's side, right next to the air filter tube going between the air filter box and the intake manifold. The other area you can do to help drain that down a little bit is the bleed nipple right on top of the radiator hose on top of the manifold. You just take and turn that counterclockwise a little bit and loosen that up right there. And you'll need to, when you refill this, you'll need to loosen that up and use that to bleed the trapped air out, but that'll also a little bit more air into the system, so you can help drain this down. Now we're going to remove the upper radiator hose clamp, which is located right here, and then there's also where it connects to the radiator right down here. and you can see that where it goes on there, and the hose clamp is right down underneath there. So we'll use a channel lock pliers, or if you have a hose clamp removal tool, that's the other thing you can use. Loose, and you may want to have a little tray or some kind of little holder to catch the if there is any leakage into there, you try to catch most of it. I've moved the radiator hose up out of the way without having to disconnect it on the radiator, and now we've got access to the front of the engine. We're going to start taking off the engine cover bolts and the tensioner, which is right down here. We're now going to remove the serpentine belt tensioner. That takes a 15 millimeter bolt, and you take a breaker bar and just get it loosened, and then you can take a small ratchet and a 13 millimeter socket and take that off. And the other one is the this idler belt pulley here for the serpentine belt. That takes a 13 millimeter, and we already loosened both of these, so we'll be taking these off here next. There are three 10 millimeter head bolts on the power steering pump. There's one on the top, and one on the side, and one on the bottom. I've taken a long 1/4 inch drive socket, deep socket, and put it through, and can reach the top one and just take that loose, and then rotate it down to the other bolt, which is right here. Again, line the hole up on the socket, and then when those bolts are removed, you can just move the power steering pump off to the side a little bit. There's nothing else to disconnect. And after I loosen those up, I've got a bent needle nose pliers that works really good to get in between the pulley and the screw hole to pull the bolt out a little bit, so I could grab it and pull it out. We have all three bolts removed from the power steering pump now, so we can just push it off to the side and out of the way a little bit. When you're taking that off, I would recommend that you take off the bottom bolt and the side bolt and do the top bolt last. It will make it a little bit easier for you. And now we should be able to pull our cam cover off. We've got a couple of bolts yet holding the bottom cover that have to be taken off so we can get the top cover off. You can see my pointer down here. There's a bolt which uses a Torx E8 female socket to put on the end of this bolt, and then a 15 millimeter box end wrench to loosen that nut up on there while you're holding that Torx bolt on there. The other piece is over here just a little bit. It's the also another Torx. This one will take a T40 male Torx socket to get that off right there. Here we see the timing belt and the gears and everything, and now this is just more for reference than anything, but this particular belt is loose here. I can move it probably at least a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch. This section is tight. This section has also got some play in it, probably close to a 1/2 inch. And this section down here is a little bit on the loose side too. There's probably 1/4 to a 1/2 inch deflection there. So that does indicate there may be some wear in this. And then also when you look down in there, you can see that there's some residue, which may be that to indicate that the water pump is leaking a little bit. You can see that right there with my pointer. And then when you go over here and look at it a little bit at a little different angle, you can see that there's some residue buildup right there. So that may indicate that there's some leakage, and it's a good thing it's getting changed now, so we can take care of that. We're going to remove the lower belly pan underneath the bumper, and to do that there's a little plastic push pin right here, and in this case I've pulled the center pin out, and then also we have the screws, which take a 7mm wrench or a 9/32 socket or 7mm socket, and they're located along here down both sides. So we're going to pull the pin out over here since it's already loose, and then you can see what this little pin looks like when it's out, and you just have to pull that out, and then when you're ready to put it back in, you line it up and then push this pin in, and that spreads it apart and keeps it in place. To finish removing the front belly pan after all the screws are taken out, you'll also have to remove some more push pins here and here, and then there's one other one over down that's a little bit hard to see and get at. It's right up about here. So you have to take those out on each side, and that should allow the removal of the belly pan. We have that front belly pan just below the bumper removed, and you can see where all the screw holes are, and you can also see on here where the fasteners for the push pins go on each side. We're removing the fan shroud, so we got room to work on taking the damper pulley off, and there's two 10mm bolts. One is right here. This is the driver's side one, and then the other one is right down over here, and that is down right below the radiator hose, which would be right down over here. Okay, so we've taken those bolts out, and now the radiator fan shroud is loose. To disconnect this, you press on this piece up here and then pull on this piece down here, so you'll be holding it one piece in each hand, and then press on this, and there's a clip inside there that will come down and unclip it from here. If you have a little trouble, just take a small screwdriver and slip it in like that, and just press it down a little bit, and it should come. You want to be careful not to break these, because then you got major headaches. Okay, here's the fan shroud removed, and just to give you a little idea when you're working on it, here is, you can see the pointer here, here's the hole for the bolt on the driver's side, and over here is the bolt hole for the passenger side. Here's the electrical connector, and then down at the bottom here on this side and over here, you'll see these are the tabs that when you put it back in, you have to make sure those are slipped in there, so that you got nice solid mounting again. Okay, this is looking down on the front, and also this again to point out where your mountings are. Here's the mounting tabs for the radiator right down here, if you can see that, right down there. And then your bolt hole is up here by these hoses. And then another thing you might want to check when you have this out, there's some rubber tabs, rubber strips along here that seal against the fan housing. Check to see all around on the that seal is all around, top, bottom, and sides, and make sure that's all in good shape and stuff. In researching this, I found that if those are damaged or loose, they can get sucked into the fans and they make a terrible noise. So you can take a look at that before you reinstall your radiator shroud. Okay, I've used a breaker bar and a homemade tool to get the damper bolt out. Here's the damper bolt. This is the tool that I use. This is actually just a piece of 1/4 inch thick by 1 inch wide steel bar that I had for another project, and it was laying around, and it even had holes drilled in it, so I just put a couple of bolts in it and tighten them up good and slip it in the slots in the pulley, and it's got about 1.5 foot long handle on it, and it worked real good to hold the pulley in place while I took my breaker bar and 18mm socket and loosened the nut up. So now we're ready to start on the process of getting the pulley off. And what I did is I went to AutoZone, and on the recommendation of the AllData DIY online manual that I have a subscription to, and this is the puller I got, and we'll just show you that real quick. Okay, there's a set of instructions in there on how to use it, and then there's also the 3 jawed puller and the pins and the bolt. And the way this goes together is you take it out and you put the bolt in and get that started. And this bolt has a hole in it so that you can put these 2 pins. There's 2 pins in the box here, and you select the pin with the correct length, and then you slide that inside here, and that will give you the bottoming it out and won't damage the threads. And this is a short puller so that there's adequate room. Once you've taken the fan housing off, there's adequate room to get in there and do that. And this is actually called a OEM brand Chrysler harmonic puller, and the part number on it is 27139, Chrysler harmonic puller, made by OEM. As I'm getting ready to use the installer, or the puller, I'm sorry, I'm finding that that the hooks on the jaws don't slip in through the slots. What you have to do is just push this little pin out, and it comes right out, and then you have to hook the jaw in that way, and then it'll go in the pulley. So you just hook it in, get each jaw hooked in place, and then you put these little pins back in place. And it looks like we're going to use the short shaft on this kit, so we'll give that a try.